Hey there, and welcome to part 2 of the 10-part Future Ready Fiber Networks webinar series hosted by EX Squared Technology and Vivacity Infrastructure Group. I'm Dean Pinaya, Executive Vice President of JSA, and welcome to our viewers. This series brings together industry thought leaders, fiber network experts, and network owners who are driving progress in the design, build, and delivery of future ready fiber networks. In today's webinar, we'll be discussing the intricacies of early stage project development, from project planning and stakeholder coordination to navigating permitting requirements and much more. A couple of quick notes before we jump in here. If you have any questions at all during the webinar, feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll do our best to get through as many as possible in the allotted time. If we don't have time to answer your questions, and often we don't worry about it. Feel free to, we invite you to join us on the EX Squared Technology LinkedIn page after the event, where we will happily address all and any outstanding questions that you might have. We will be sharing the link to the post-event LinkedIn discussion right in the chat box, so be sure to look out for that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I am pleased to introduce our expert speakers for today's virtual roundtable. They are Brad Burgess. Brad is the Deputy to the State Engineer Transportation Technology Group, Arizona Department of Transportation. Welcome, Brad. We also have Mr. Pete Hoffswell. Pete is the Superintendent of Broadband Services, Holland Board of Public Works. We have Mr. Hank Pinaya. Hank is the Engineering Manager for permits at EX Squared Technology. And finally, we have Mr. Chris Brower. Chris is the Program Manager at EX Squared Technologies. All right, here we go. As fiber development accelerates across the country, access often depends on what happens long before construction begins. Whether public or private, network projects must navigate complex permitting landscapes, balance regulatory requirements, and coordinate with a wide range of stakeholders. This webinar will explore the groundwork necessary to deploy networks efficiently and collaboratively, easy for me to say, right? And how strategic planning, strong partnerships, and regulatory expertise can help mitigate challenges before they arise. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and start with project planning essentials. And Hank and Chris, this one is to you both. Question number one. What elements do you consider the most, like a big question for number one, what elements do you consider the most critical during the earliest planning phases of a fiber project? Hank, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I think there's a number of things here to consider. Requirement gathering and feasibility assessments. I think that's important. You want to do potentially some site surveys, some feasibility studies. You want to look at potential barriers, natural barriers, for instance, highways, rivers. And so you want to look at those things. You want to develop a preliminary design and do some preliminary planning on the routing of cables. So that way you can understand what the impact of that preliminary design has to permitting, and maybe avoid some of those barriers that could cause delays. You want to make sure you have good resource planning and risk management. Make sure you have the workforce planning, recruiting, or the people trained to do the work that you are proposing. And of course, documentation and standards. It's important to develop comprehensive documentation, create detailed records, and have all that information put together.
Very good, Hank. Thanks. Chris, your thoughts?
I think Hank really said the bulk of it, right? I'll add to that, saying that here in Arizona, where we live, there's a couple of added things that we look at, right? We have some additional cultural and environmental concerns to plan for. We also do the normal national NEPA with the protecting the waters of the U.S. and so on. So that all is very important in the upfront planning stages, well before project kickoff. So,
excellent. Thank you very much. Next question is to Brad and Pete. Brad and Pete, how do you align internal goals with external requirements, like community needs, funding timelines, or construction windows? Brad, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So we definitely try to align those with stakeholders when we have permittees submit permits for ADOT. We get notified of different funding requirements. Maybe it expires at a certain time of the year, and so therefore we might have to try to bump that permit up, in front of the line a bit, things of that nature. But overall, yeah, we definitely try to align those, internal and external requirements in order. We're all trying to accomplish the same goal to basically have a successful submitted and issued permit at the end of the day. And so, yeah, we're willing to work with permittees on any of those factors.
All trying to accomplish the same goal. I love it. Pete, your thoughts?
I think the biggest thing is to communicate with everybody that's involved in the process as much as you possibly can. And that starts with just identifying who those people are. Who are the stakeholders involved? Who are the resources that are going to be working on your project? And you got to let them know this is the plan. What's our schedule? Do you know what the schedule is? Because somebody's got to nail it out. And you get everybody in the loop. You're going to get a feedback loop then going, and maybe not in this conference. I hope we don't have any feedback loops, but I think it's important to get the feedback from those folks and going, hey, we're going to build fiber in our town. Are you in or not? If you're not, what do we need to do to get you on board? A great example here in Holland, Michigan is we're building fiber citywide. We got to talk to our permitting department over at the city and go, hey, you guys, we don't work that much very often lately, but we're going to start working a lot. So are you ready for us? And have those conversations early and often, and then through the whole project, of course.
Awesome, Pete. Thank you very much. I was actually just in Holland, Michigan about 2 weeks ago on my way back home to Valparaiso, Indiana from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So love that place. Okay, moving on, permitting process. And this is going to be for everyone. So the question is this: what permitting issues tend to delay projects the most, and what can teams do to prepare for them in advance? We'll go in order. Hank, we'll start with you.
Sure. So, there could be a number of things that could cause delays, and these are the things you want to avoid. Such things as incomplete or inaccurate documentation. You need to provide the municipality that you're working with the information that they're asking for and by the standard that they're asking for it. Lack of understanding of those regulations. Make sure you understand what they need, what they require. Understand sometimes there's delay with the agency. They don't necessarily have the resources to do all the applications that you're submitting. So have a conversation with them. Talk about what their resources are and what kind of delays that could potentially cause. Changes to designs that you've already completed. So you've completed the design, you've submitted the permit, and then there's changes after that. Try to avoid that. Make sure that the designs you have completed are final and they've been checked. All those changes cause revisions and delays in the whole process, adds more work to the municipality. And then, of course, as Pete said, communicate. It's important to communicate all these things. That is essential.
Very good, Hank. Thank you. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, so permitting's an interesting process, right? And that's why we're discussing this today. But it often can be as lengthy and as difficult as the physical construction process, right? So you're dealing with multiple agencies from local, town, city, state, and then up to the federal level. All of those agencies have a differing set of requirements, right? So understanding what those are, and as we move from different states and towns, those change, right? So upfront, when we move into an area and plan a project, we want to understand those, understand what those requirements are, and have the right people and processes in place to navigate them appropriately. And like I said, that's often as lengthy as the construction, depending on the size of the project. But it's important to have the right people in place to navigate that process.
Thank you. And Brad?
Yeah, actually, very well said. I agree with everything said so far. And specifically to Arizona, it is probably a bit unique, but there's probably other states and cities and towns and counties out there just like us, where here at ADOT, we don't own a lot of the land underneath roadways. And so that land is actually owned by U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, tribes. It could even be at the state level by state parks and state land. And that changes things a bit because we're just there by easement only, which means we're just there by permission only. And so those permittees have a lot of homework and due diligence to do on their part in order to kind of plan ahead and look at those underlying landowners to see what, as Chris kind of mentioned, that there could be some different requirements and things like that coming from those landowners. That's definitely one of the areas that tend to kind of give some delays to permitting. And then the only other area, not the only other area, but the other area that comes to mind, just environmental. Same kind of principle applies. A lot of environmental, a lot of homework needs to be done in order for environmental to be successful in a timely manner.
Excellent, Brad. Thank you. And Pete, final thoughts on this permitting question?
I think you got to get the players in the room before you even submit your very first permit. Do we all know the process? Every individual permitting office is going to have different way of doing things. They may have different requirements in your submission. Do you know what all those are? Are you ready to be able to give them a permit they're going to look at and not throw right back in your face? And then something to build on, Hank was talking about design. You need to have a really solid design up front, but you need to be flexible because what will happen is they'll go, yeah, you want to build fiber that way, we're not going to give you a permit for that. Can you rework your project to work in a way that's going to work for our town and for our community? And maybe they go, you can't cross the road there with fiber because there's a whole bunch of stuff underground already. Do you have a process on your side to get that design done and turned around very quickly? Because every one of those steps is going to cause delay. And because these projects are so complex, those little delays are going to add up to big delays down the way, and that's going to be a problem for your project. So figure out the path you need to traverse before you even get on the path with that first permit submission, I think is important. Talk to the people, like I say, and I'll say this probably 100 times in this session, know the people and talk to them and go, what is it you need? Because we're ready to get some stuff to you.
I love it. Thanks so much. Next question on permitting. How do outside factors like cultural, we started to talk about this a little bit, how outside factors like cultural, environmental, forestry, etc., play a part in the permitting process? And we'll start with you, Hank.
So how do repeat that? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. How do outside, I did kind of mumble through this one. How do outside factors like cultural, environmental, forestry, etc., play a part in the permitting process?
Yes. So I think it was Brad that said there's a lot of upfront work to understand all that information and gather and collect all that information. So there is a lot of work up front to understand that, to collect it, and to make sure that you have people that are knowledgeable in that area to document it and to document it accurately. Yeah, that's important.
Very good. And Chris, your thoughts on it?
The cultural subject, specifically here in Arizona, is a sensitive one, right? So you've got to make sure that you are adequately protecting those assets, right? And oftentimes we'll reach out to subject matter experts on that using third-party firms that specialize in that, right? And kind of the base process here is when you lay your project out, you'll consult on those areas of sensitivity. There are records in place of where those areas are. But depending on the age of those records, they often have to be refreshed and renewed. If those records have aged out, there's a different level of survey required. So you may not understand that if you hadn't done your upfront research, and that could significantly increase the time needed to get a permit. We've experienced that. We'll continue to experience that as we build in Arizona, and it's something that we have learned to plan for when we're planning out new areas. So
Very good. Thank you very much. And Brad, we're going to get you involved now, I promise. This question is to you, Brad. How can deployment partners be best prepared to meet permitting requirements when collaborating with when collaborating with transportation departments such as ADOT? Brad?
Yeah, great question. I love this question. We work a lot with our permittees, our customers, on just trying to make sure that we call it the answers for the test. And so the best way, what we recommend is always a pre-application meeting with the district that the permit work will be performed in within the state of Arizona. And part of that pre-application process is kind of what's been alluded to already, is there's lots of communication. We're trying to make sure the right people in the room. What is the scope of work of the project involved? What type of installation method? Is it plowing? Is it trenching? Is it directional drill? All those kind of factors play into everything else that we've talked about as far as environmental and cultural and forestry and all of that. And so really in a nutshell, yeah, we have on our website a pre-application checklist. And again, I call it the answers to the test, that if you kind of go and check that out and read through that, it'll help you basically submit a more quality submission, which will ultimately result in a more timely permit issuance on your end.
Awesome, Brad. Thank you so much. And now a subject that I'm sure is near and dear to everyone's heart, engaging with regulatory bodies. Question number 1 under this category is, what makes for a strong and productive relationship between network builders and regulatory agencies? I'm guessing communication is probably one of them, but Hank, what's your thoughts?
I think transparency, sharing information, insights, making sure that you provide all the information that is required, and learn from some of the feedback. Understand that there's some changes in that information, that you're complying with that information, and I think just transparency, it builds trust when you're able to share information like that. I think that's key.
Excellent, Hank. Thank you. Chris, your thoughts?
I often leave that to Hank's department.
Well, you got it.
No, but right. Communication is key, and I'll echo the statements from the gentleman from Holland. Right, you've got to reach out. It's emails get lost, information gets lost in translation. Face to face or even a phone call really improves that communication. So, what do you need? What can I be prepared for? Are some key information that we'll need. But I was only half joking. I thought I'd shed some light on this when I said I leave the Hanks department, but often we do, right? They're very good at communicating to those various agencies, and I rely on them.
Yeah, awesome. And I would also add, it's important that you reply in a timely manner. Don't let things kind of fester and linger. Address those immediately.
Excellent. Other thoughts? All right, I'm going to jump into the next question under everyone's still favorite topic, regulatory bodies. How can public and private stakeholders better align expectations to avoid roadblocks during deployment? Who we're going to start with? Well, Brad, you jump in here on this one first?
Sure. I'd say a lot of the same things that's been said already as far as planning, communication. When I hear this question, I think probably more about the timeliness, that everyone, always wants their permit faster, right? And so that all depends. It goes back a lot to like the scope of the project as well, that it could be a smaller project, a larger project, but the set expectations, it just depends on that project. If it's a large project, how many miles of roadway is it passing along, or how many roadways is it crossing underneath or over, those kind of things. So the more information in the beginning, the more planning, the more communication, and it might seem intimidating at first, but it's really not all that intimidating once you open up that communication channel and start talking about the project and identifying those potential roadblocks.
Awesome. Pete, your thoughts?
Yeah, we're building fiber here in the city of Holland, citywide right now, and permitting is a big part of that. One of the regulatory components in our town is simply private land ownership. We have 20 developments in town. They all have their own bylaws, and we want to build fiber in there. So it's not exactly permitting, but these are stakeholders, and they do have rules in their association, and they have a bunch of folks living there that really, really want our fiber. So do you know how to get through all those hoops to be able to build fiber past every single property in your town? And it's some of this is with these private developments, private land use. It's different than Hank, I'm going to say a simple easement.
Yes.
No
Yeah.
such thing. It's worse than it's simply producing an easement. You're living in utility access and private land that's been written up in a deed a long time ago. Do you know what those are in your town? You got to make a list. You got to find, those homeowners associations. You got to go out and meet with them, because they're the ones that give you the stamp of approval to build that fiber into their neighborhood that's part of your city. And that's been a little bit of a beast for us. We had to learn on the fly. I wish we had spent some time before the project to get that going a little bit better. Turned out fine in the end, but it did give a couple extra hoops to jump through in our project.
I love this answer, because when I read the question initially, my assumption was, well, hell, it's got to be the public stuff that's got to be a lot more maybe sticky, or a lot more red tape there. But it sounds like that may not be the case, or at least they each present their own sets of challenges.
Absolutely, yeah. I know we're sort of focused on permits, but that's only just one tiny slice of the pie that is building a fiber network. There's many other beasts, and I know that this webinar series is going to tap into as many of those as possible. So stay tuned.
That's right.
Hank and Chris, your thoughts on this one?
Just to add a little bit to Pete's statement on those easements. Easements are you're negotiating real estate in essence. There's a lot of savvy people out there that understand the value of the land, and you have to go in there and negotiate rights to that property, and that can be very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this question? All right, let's go ahead and move on. This one again is for everyone. What one last piece of permitting advice would you give to any organization planning to deploy fiber in the future? One last piece of advice for our viewers. Let's go ahead and start with Chris. We'll start with you.
Investigate and learn as much as you can the requirements for the area that you're proposing, right? And we've been talking to this with the various landowners and the various agencies that you'll be attempting to permit through. Get as much intel as you can on what they require. And again, I'll call back to the communication front and be able to real-time communicate with them on your intentions and then their requirements.
Very good. Hank, your thoughts?
I think a couple things. Avoid costly rework. Try to do your best in going through all the steps and trying to finalize your design so that there isn't all the additional costs, even in construction after the fact. You don't want to have those additional costs. And then I would say make sure you build up enough capacity for future expansions of, for instance, in Holland, what Pete's saying, you have some future subdivisions there. So plan for those things. That'll help in the cost in the future.
Excellent. Brad?
Yeah, early communication, with those permitting agencies, even if you don't know which side of the road your fiber is going on yet, even if you don't know which road your fiber is going on yet, just start, those conversations earlier, the better.
Outstanding. And Pete, the final thoughts on the webinar?
Oh boy, I'm wrapping up what everybody else said here. Know the people involved in this process. Ask them a ton of questions way before the project even starts. Build a design with their input from the beginning, going, hey, don't cross that road. Well, don't design your fiber to cross that road then. Get that out of the way at the very beginning. And then hold hands through the entire process. How's it going? Is this working well for you? Should we submit our permits in a different way to make things easier for you? What can you do to get us our approved permits back quicker? How can we work together? And it's, all the work we do, people, is about people, right? Keep the people first, and they will help you have a successful project. Whether it's the permitting department, your construction crews, your stakeholders in your town, engage with them all and help them understand what the project is, why you're doing it, and how you're going to get it done. And you will smooth those bumps out early and have a great project.
Awesome, Pete. Well said. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today. This webinar series has been certainly educational for me, and we're only on episode 2. So thanks again very much. And thank you to our attendees and to EX Squared Technology and Vivacity Infrastructure Group. We will see you on the next installment. That's the 3rd installment.